Back, China's ambassador to Australia has used a rare address to the nation's media to praise the Albanese government for its efforts to diffuse diplomatic tensions between the two nations. But Xiao Qian has also lamented the AUKUS agreement, believing it places unnecessary focus on China's influence in the region.
I don't think AUKUS is a good idea. I don't think it's constructive. I don't think it's helpful, especially when you're targeting China as a potential threat or adversary.
Joining us live now for more on this is Dr. Alex Bristow, Deputy Director of Defence Strategy and National Security with the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Firstly, what did you make of the speech we heard yesterday?
Well, I think the Chinese ambassador tried to strike a positive note. He didn't, for example, have a go at Australia's COVID restrictions, which I think many people had foreseen he would try to do. However, he did somewhat blot his copybook by getting involved in a spat with the Japanese ambassador, overreacting to something the Japanese ambassador had written in the media earlier that day, and making personal attacks on the Japanese ambassador, I think, as well as claiming that Australia had something to fear from Japan from its World War II history. So I think he actually hasn't achieved what he set out to do. I think the Chinese ambassador wanted to put a good foot forward. He hasn't really achieved that because now the headlines are all about his spat with Japan. But yeah, he was certainly trying, I think, to put a positive spin on this. I actually do agree with the Japanese ambassador that we need to remain vigilant about what China is trying to do here. I think it is good that we've restored high-level dialogue. I think it is good that we've stabilised a relationship, to use the parlance that Foreign Minister Wong and others have used. However, we do, as the Chinese ambassador said, we're now entering a critical phase. We need to be careful about what China is trying to achieve next. So we need to remember that the reason we're at this position in history is because China tried to systematically coerce Australia. It put pressure on our trade. It's arbitrarily detained our nationals. That pressure is still there. And it's on China to remove that. It's not for us to start horse trading, to start saying, well, as the Chinese will try to make us do, to sort of say, well, if we're going to give something, you need to give us something back. I think it's important that we remain firm on the issues like the CPTPP. We shouldn't be looking more favourably on China's application. And from what we've heard from our ministers, I think it's clear that they won't. We should be weighing, for example, China's application alongside other economies like Taiwan.
That spat with Japan, was that a knee-jerk reaction or was that part of his agenda?
I got the sense that he maybe got a bit carried away there. He obviously, the timing, I think, of that piece came out in The Australian, I think, that morning. So, perhaps he was a bit, didn't have too much time to react to it. The Japanese ambassador's been outspoken about China for some time. I think there's good grounds to what the Japanese ambassador says, but I expect there's no love lost between those two individuals. Certainly, whatever the Chinese ambassador was trying to do, I think the impression he gave was the wrong one. Rather than people coming away thinking about a positive message, instead they think that he's just got a personal gripe, that he got carried away, and that he's dredged up World War II history when there really is no basis for that. He was absolutely wrong in claiming that Japan has done nothing to acknowledge its past. For example, the former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe came to Darwin, laid a reef at a memorial there. There have been strong efforts to acknowledge everything that Japan did wrong in the past. But really, we are dealing with a fundamentally different Japan now. And one which is, to use the Japanese ambassador's words, almost a quasi-ally in the same way as the United States is now. If you look at the security agreement that Australia and Japan signed last year, they actually draw some of its language very closely from the ANZUS Treaty. So I think it is wrong to say that Australia has something to fear from Japan. We do have something to fear from China, and we should be working with Japan and others to confront that.
What's your assessment about the concerns China's ambassador expressed about the AUKUS agreement?
Well, he focused really on the submarines, and he's picking up on lots of debate that's going on here about whether the submarines are good value for money, how long they're going to take, whether there's going to be a long capability gap. But AUKUS isn't only about the submarines. AUKUS is a technology partnership which extends to a lot of other important technologies, artificial intelligence in military technology, hypersonic missiles, several areas, about 8 in total, where we should see progress long before we see these nuclear-powered submarines. So the Australian taxpayer, to use the Chinese ambassador's language, the Australian taxpayer is going to see some value for money out of AUKUS in the coming years. But it's much more important than just technologies itself. It's a strategic declaration, a once-in-a-generation declaration by Australia, the UK and the US, that they are jointly concerned about the strategic environment. By that, they mean the rise of China, China's rapid militarisation, which is being done in a completely non-transparent way. It's not explaining why it's, for example, massively increasing the size of its nuclear forces, massively increasing the size of its navy. All the while, China is ignoring international rules and norms, putting pressure on Taiwan and other places. It's absolutely appropriate that Australia is part of AUKUS. We shouldn't get distracted by the sums around the submarines.
Dr. Alex Bristow, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much.